Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology, and culture in its myriad of forms. My name is Ben Warner, and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? We're getting in for a nice cold day today, and but we're dedicated to the cause.
we are. It's July. It's cold, and it's actually wet. It's raining at the moment right now as we're recording.
Now, I remember those wet Adelaide winter days very well, and I can see it in the background there. So we're going to talk about Pokemon Go today because, you know, if everyone else is talking about it, we might as well do it as well, given our focus. But before we get into that, I just wanted to mention quickly that I had the chance to see Star Trek Beyond yesterday. And you can probably look up one of our earlier episodes where I basically tore the previous film to shreds. And it basically destroyed my faith in Star Trek being good going forward. But somehow I was really surprised by the film because it's the only film actually in the entire series, and I'm including the old ones here, that actually feels closest to the original series episodes from the 60s. And that was, I thought, refreshing because basically it was like an original series episode, but they had the $200 million to spend on it. So they got that nice balance between the two. And I never would have expected that from the director of the Fast and Furious films of all people.
Well, that's good news. It's good news to hear Star Trek is back and probably as close to the original vision as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing is there's a new TV show coming out early next year as well, apparently. I think Netflix has got the rights to put it to stream it. So yeah. We'll check that out and see how it goes. But, 50 years and it's seemingly still going strong. Okay, we'll start talking about Pokemon Go now. And what I think maybe the way to approach this is I'll explain why it caught my attention. Now, obviously, I'd heard about a couple of weeks worth of news stories about it, and I was partially interested in this idea of an augmented reality game, and it was kind of a new take on things, but it still didn't really catch my interest because it's a game, and I don't really play games that much apart from, whipping out like an Angry Birds type thing for the whole of 5 minutes on my phone, and then I get bored with it and don't get back to it for like 3 months. I was out earlier in the week, and it was a really nice winter's day. The sun was out. It was a really nice day to be out and enjoying the fresh air and just really, enjoying the city and, and all that sort of thing. And I'm walking along the river there, and there's basically an overpass that I came across, and there was 50 people, at least 50 people underneath this overpass, all in the shadow, hiding from the light, it would seem, and heads buried in their phones. And it took me a minute, and then I realized, they're all playing Pokemon Go. And it was just one of the most disturbing things I've seen, because it was 50 people. They were all silent, all buried with their heads in their phones, and they might as well have been plugged into the Matrix as far as I was concerned. But this is just really interesting, isn't it? Like, on the one hand, if you take the developers' point of view, that, they made it so that they could get people out of the house, literally. But like you said before we got on, it's like these people are probably the same inside the house. It's just that we never see them. And when you see them outside in public like that, that's what's
disturbing. Yeah.
That's what catches your eye.
People exist, and, there are some very hardcore gamers out there. In fact, there's probably a lot more hardcore gamers than people realise. But they're not inside the house.
Yeah, exactly. My experience with games is not really that great. I mean, I used to play them when I was younger, but even then I wouldn't spend hours and hours on them. It would, reach its end point after an hour or so, a bit like, I don't know, watching a TV episode or any other form of entertainment or whatever. But I think what was really interesting, and we'll refer to an article that I found on, if I can find it here, I think it was Arts Technica or one of the other ones, where basically they were saying, today.com, where basically they were saying that what's actually happening is that these people are reaching a state of flow. The idea that you you're so involved in what you're doing, and it just becomes effortless, and you forget time passing, you forget everything around you. You're just so in the zone for doing this activity, whatever it is. Now that might be fine if you're actually producing something, or doing some work, or being creative or whatever. But I'm not sure what Pokemon Go is contributing to the world in that respect.
Well, yeah. Look, these sorts of ideas have been around since the 1990s.
Yeah.
And but let's be honest. If you can create an alternate reality that is suitably more engaging and more interesting than the one you live in the real world, I mean, there's a very strong attraction for that. I don't know what your motivation to come back to the real world is. If you can be a hero, if you can be a rock star, if you can be anything else, why would you need to come back?
Yeah, and I'd give them props for the developers in particular. I think Niantic, I believe they're called, who, they've created a game that is very different. It's not just playing it on your device. It makes you go out into the world and that sort of thing. So there's something interesting in that.
It's a great game. I think it's a brilliant idea. Probably, if anything, I'm surprised that it hasn't happened sooner. I mean,
unless they needed like a franchise level involvement, like Pokemon, for instance,
well,
to be involved.
Pokemon's perfect. I don't think any other game could have carried it. It has to be something universal, and this is a second coming for Pokemon. So what it's actually done is it's activated people who played the original game series. So what it's done is it's just awoken a huge following and brought them into the 21st century. I'm certain now we'll see a whole lot of other similar games come on the scene that won't require a franchise like Pokemon, but will provide other similar experiences. I can well imagine playing anything from an alternate reality detective games, that based on geocaching, the real location sort of thing. Brilliant. Bring it on, except I think it's highly disruptive to those of us not playing the game, just going around our daily business.
Well, that's the thing. That's a point that's worth bringing up, isn't it? It's not as if it's not a behavioural type that we haven't seen already. The old jokes of people walking into poles on the street because they're busy texting or whatever. But this one has the potential to put you even more involved in your device because you're so into trying to track down these Pokemon or whatever it is that's happening.
Well, as you pointed out, it is bizarre that you, who's going about whatever it is you're doing in the real world, are inhabiting a space with people who are using a physical real world space to participate in a virtual or alternate reality activity. I mean, that is a first. So I think that's very interesting because that has implications. I mean, can you imagine going to the Empire State Building because you're a tourist and you want to have a look around, and at the same time you've got people trying to fight monsters or catch like imaginary beings there as well. There's two completely different purposes at the same geolocation. It's quite interesting.
What about if someone comes up with an idea of maybe limiting or maybe establishing a place to go to do these sorts of things? Like,
that's bound to happen.
I was thinking it's like an orienteering type activity where in the past, you'd be, get those clues or whatever, and then you'd run around trying to chase things down or whatever. This is sort of a super hyped up version of that can be dynamic and instantly updated and changed and sort of infinite, whereas an orienteering exercise is limited to whatever's created for the day.
Well, if Pokemon could get all these guys out into the one location where you saw them, I mean, why wouldn't you just create a nightclub for these sorts of people with all sorts of virtual games to play inside the nightclub? Because by the sounds of it, they're all too shy to talk to each other.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, you could this could be a way of getting people to talk to each other.
It could be, but they're probably more comfortable speaking to virtual creatures. I don't know.
This is true. You mentioned the geolocation side of things before. Obviously, there could be a downside to that. Now, Oliver Stone recently said a few words about that, and that calling it surveillance capitalism, or some people would call surveillance capitalism, at least that's what he said. And it's, and he's saying, nobody has ever seen this in the history of the world. They've never seen something like Google ever. It's the biggest, new, fastest growing business ever, and they've invested huge amounts of money into what surveillance is, which is essentially data mining. And the app, the Pokemon Go app, got into trouble pretty quickly when it was realized it was tapping into people's Google accounts and lifting their data straight out of the account. And I didn't follow it up, but I have a feeling that they tried to tie that down a little bit once they realized what was going on, and they said, it was unintentional, and et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, someone like Oliver Stone would never think that it was an accident.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I would have assumed, though, that anyone playing Pokemon Go would have known, using, as soon as you turn on location settings, that app knows. It doesn't have to be Pokemon, it's any app at all.
Yeah.
Even probably more concerning, though, is that when Google went out and made Google Maps, not only did they photograph every aspect of the street that you're walking down or living in, they also triangulated all the phone towers. So just off that, they have a pretty good idea of where you are and can advertise with a Google ad, even if you don't have your location search on.
Yeah.
So, surveillance capitalism is here. I think Pokemon Go is probably the least scary bit, although what the real talk with has been that playing Pokemon Go can get you to go to a particular location, and then that, you being in a particular location, is an opportunity for somebody to sell you something. And I think that that's probably, the Orwellian kind of angle. But, the reality is Google knows where you are. So does Facebook, and so do Apple. So, I'm not so sure it matters.
Just one final point on this before we move on was that we mentioned this before we got on, that I guess in previous visions that we've seen through science fiction and whatnot in the past, before any of this sort of became a reality, was that there was some sort of evil overarching mastermind behind all of it, whether it was Skynet or the machines in the Matrix, or a secret government or whatever. But the reality is that none of that, not in any sort of coordinated way, is really happening. It's just more that it's people looking for opportunities, and Google data mining is not about the 1984 concept as such, as it's just about making money off of you. But it seems like the described effects that, say, a novel like 1984 might, or the Skynet vision of the future, or the Matrix, or whatever, has described, these are the behaviors that are coming out, even though that sort of overarching evil mastermind may not necessarily be there.
Yeah, well, I find it interesting because a lot of these dystopian presumptions rely on the fact that nothing changes except for, the evil or the unfortunate, unethical outlook. But, if you really look at, say, that all this is about is a money-making opportunity, and that's where a lot of this data goes, that's so true. But with the disruption, a lot of the businesses that are trying to make money through this surveillance will actually find their business model completely disrupted, perhaps even to the point where it won't matter anymore. So if you can imagine, I've got a bricks and mortar store and I'm trying to sell you something, but if internet sales cut me out, then what's the point of geolocation?
Yeah.
Because really what you want me to do is just go onto the website, order, and have it delivered wherever. So, you wonder a lot of these things. You look at what Airbnb could potentially do to the hospitality industry. You look at, what Uber could do to the taxi industries. You can see right now, if you base what we know now, you can see a dystopian future for the data, or for an unsavoury, just profit-making motive. But on the flip side, these very, industries that might be trying to benefit from this data may actually find ultimately that they don't have a business left. So I don't know where that leads us.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, I think that's what it is. It's like that there's no, it's not, I wouldn't say it's random, but it's like it's not being necessarily guided in that sense. So it could go in any which one direction, or it could just be really fragmented.
That's right. If that's what the disruption does, which is fragments the market, which is what we've seen in every aspect of the disruption, then ultimately, I guess, where does all that data go and who controls it? And that's the Orwellian concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, like you, I'm not really so afraid of capitalists having data. I mean, if their only motive is profit, they'll find that there's only so much profit they can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finally, before we finish up, I wanted to mention Nintendo in this discussion, not because they developed the particular app that we're talking about, but because they're part of a consortium that obviously owns the trademarks and rights to Pokemon. And going back, that company was huge, back in the day. And, I had, the Nintendo console. They made the best games. And, and I, again, used to waste time, many a time on, playing those games and whatnot. But in recent years, they've faced difficulty because, there's a trend away from the traditional console gaming platform. And there was they finally relented and said, we're going to start developing games for like iOS and Android. But obviously they weren't but they deliberately did say, we're not going to port the old games because they don't work in a touch environment. I would think, although playing Super Mario might be interesting on your phone. If Flappy Bird is anything to go by. But this is interesting. It's like a first step in a way for them because they got a huge boost in their part or their ownership in this from the Pokemon part of it. Their sales were boosted. Well, not sales, but their the money that they have earned from this has really helped them a lot. And I wonder if they've got the innovation or the idea, because I'm sure they've got people there that could develop their own apps, with some of their back catalog. They've got a lot of really iconic characters and whatnot that they can port games into. So it'll be interesting to see if Nintendo can, take advantage of something like this.
Yeah, well, we hope so. I mean, everyone, I think, has deep down got a soft spot for Nintendo, and Pokemon Go shows that. So hopefully they can use the success to transfer their quirky, sort of fun gameplay into some real-world gameplay. I say bring it on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So thanks again for that. We're not going to go out this afternoon and play Pokemon Go because it's too cold. But we'll follow this one and see. Well, the other interesting point, I guess, to make is it a craze? Will it peter out? Will it be a 15 minutes of fame thing? Only time will tell, I guess.
Probably, yeah.
All right. So don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and contact there. You can interact with us on our social media accounts, Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. We've got our photos on Instagram and Flickr. And if you think anyone's interested in these regular discussions that Steve and I have, please send them to our website, scitechculture.com, and subscribe there. All right. So that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.